Good morning, students. In my previous video, I had explained you the concept of communication. I had also explained you what are the barriers to effective communication and how to overcome the barriers. Now in this video, we will understand which are the different types of communication. Now, the communication are divided into different types depending on channel, direction, and the method of communication. So, depending upon channel, communication is divided into two types, that is formal and informal. Depending upon the direction of flow of communication, it is classified as downward, upward, horizontal, and diagonal communication. And depending upon the method of communication, it is classified as oral communication, written communication, and gestural position, which is also known as non-verbal communication. So now one by one we will see in detail. The first type of communication is formal type. Now, formal type of communication is mostly used in the professional life or in organization. Now, in case of formal communication, there is a set channel through which the communication passes from one individual to another individual. There is particular procedure that is to be followed for doing formal type of communication. Now, this communication is also known as official communication, and it covers all the verbal expressions that address a formal need. So, the communication that takes place in organization can be classified under formal communication. The next type is informal communication. Now, informal communication is unofficial in nature, and it is also known as grapevine communication. Now, in informal communication, there is no set channel for communicating with others, or there is no rules and regulation to communicate. Now, in case of formal communication, as I told you, there is a procedure or there is a method to communicate. For example, if a student wants to take leave, he cannot directly approach to the principal. He has to go through a proper channel. For example, he is going to pass on the leave application to his class coordinator, then it would be approved by HOD, and then it would be approved by principal. So there is a fixed channel through which communication takes place in case of formal communication. But in case of informal communication, there is no set channel, there is no set procedure to communicate with other. For example, if we are discussing among friends, if we are gossiping, then it is a part of informal communication. When there is a discussion taking place during the tea break in office, that is informal communication. Now, informal communication is spontaneous and free flow, and it spreads like the wildfire in the organization because no formal rules are to be followed. So many times after formal communication, a lot of discussion takes place which is a part of informal communication. For example, if there are certain announcement about the change in rules and regulation, that is done through formal communication in the organization. But the discussion about this policy changes or rules and regulation changes takes place between employees in informal way. The next type of communication is oral communication, which is a part of verbal communication. Now, verbal communication is a communication where we are going to make the use of. So, the first type of verbal communication is oral communication. Under that, first one is face to face communication. Now, this communication can be formal or it can also be informal. For example, if we are talking to our friends or family, it is for informal oral communication. We are having face to face interaction. But if we are conducting a meeting or a seminar at workplace, that is a part of oral communication, which is formal in nature. So in case of oral communication, we are making the use of words to communicate face to face. The second type of verbal communication is oral communication at distance. For example, if we are communicating with the help of video conferencing, if we are having the telephonic call, or if we are communicating with the help of mobile phones, that becomes a part of oral communication at distance. And in this type of communication, your tone of voice and pace of delivery has very importance, because we are not having face to face interactions. So these uh, these type of things matters a lot while having the oral communication at distance. So very importantly, we should maintain these type of things, which is a part of non-verbal communication. So while communicating orally, even the importance of non-verbal communication should be taken into consideration. For example, we are having face to face communication, but your body language, your eye contact should match with the things that you are communicating orally, otherwise it is going to pass on the wrong message. Now, the second type of verbal communication is written communication, which is also known as business correspondence. Now, it is very well-known type of communication. A written communication is act of writing, typing, or printing symbols like letters and numbers to convey the information. That means we are making the use of word but in written format. Where if we are sending emails, that is a part of written communication. If we are forwarding the letters, that is also the part of written communication. The policies are written, the rules and regulations are written, which is also a part of written communication. Notices are forwarded, that also becomes a part of written communication. So written communication is commonly used to share the information through books, pamphlets, blogs, letters, emails, memos, and many more. Now, the next type of communication, depending upon the method, it is non-verbal communication. Now, under verbal communication, we have seen there are two types: oral and written communication. And non-verbal communication is also known as gesture communication, in which we are using our body posture, gestures, the tone of voice, our facial expressions, then the distance we are maintaining, the space we are maintaining, even that is a part of non-verbal communication, where you are not using the words to express yourself, but you are making the use of all these things to communicate. For example, Charlie Chaplin, a famous character we all have seen, he made us laugh without using a single word. So that is a part, or that is the best example for non-verbal communication, where with the help of body postures, body language, gestures, eye contact, the tone of voice, we are communicating a lot with others. So this is subtle in nature, but it is still very powerful. So as I already told you, while we are having oral communication is also backed by the non-verbal communication, by because when I am communicating, the tone of my voice, or when I am conducting a meeting, my body language, my eye contact is going to affect my oral communication. So in case of non-verbal communication, we are not using words and we are still communicating with others. Now, depending upon the flow of direction, communication is divided into four different types. First is downward communication. Now, as we all know, there is hierarchy in each and every organization. So, when the things, or when the message pass on from top level management to lower level management, or to the employer worker working at shop floor, it is known as downward communication, because the flow of communication is in downward direction. Now, the direction of communication strengthens the authoritarian structure of the organization, and it is also known as downstream communication. So, the flow is from upper level management to the lower level management. Generally, this kind of communication is used to make people aware about the policies, to make the aware about the manager decision that are taking place in the organization. Rules and regulations are explained through downward communication. Now, upward communication is exactly opposite of downward, in which the flow of communication is from lower level management to the upper level management. Now in this case, the suggestion, information, or if any complaints or grievances are there at lower level or in between workers, that are passed on to the management with the help of manager. So the flow of information is from lower to upper direction. That is why it is known as upstream communication. The next type of communication is lateral, which is known as horizontal communication. Now, when the managers or when the people working at the same level, even if in different departments, are communicating with each other, that is known as lateral communication, or that is also known as horizontal communication. Now this type of communication is required to maintain the coordination. For example, if the managers of different departments are communicating, so this is the way we can maintain the harmony and coordination of work between different departments. So it is a communication which is taking place between peers or people of equal position or having same mental abilities or capabilities. The next type of communication is diagonal, or which is also known as crosswise communication. Now this type of communication also takes place at workplace, where people when it takes place when people working at same level interact with the people who are working at higher level or at lower level in the organization hierarchy wise. For example, HOD of science department or HOD of computer science department or commerce department is interacting or is communicating with the principal, that is also a part of diagonal communication. Or if the HODs are communicating with the office staff, it also becomes a type of crosswise communication. So in this video we have seen different types of communication depending upon the method which is used, the channel which is used, and the flow of direction.